Before we dive into today's story, we'd like to ask you to take a moment and check out a friend's new channel where some truly captivating stories are shared. You'll find the link in the description below. And if you enjoy powerful, real-life tales like this one, please subscribe and leave a comment. Now settle in as we begin our journey into a tale of heartache, betrayal, and the slow shattering of a once happy marriage. For the past 6 months, nothing had been the same between Kelly and me. There were no embraces, no kisses, no hints of the intimacy we once shared. At first, I chalked it up to exhaustion. After all, taking care of our 2 young boys is no easy feat. Yet as the weeks turned into months, the absence of connection became undeniable. It wasn't merely about the physical. Communication had dwindled to cold exchanges about the kids or household chores. When I tried to hold her, she recoiled as if I were a stranger. I'm not one to let problems fester silently while pretending everything is all right. So one evening, after the kids had gone to bed, I gently sat her down. With a heavy heart pounding in my chest, I asked, "Kelly, can we talk?" She sighed with a touch of frustration and replied, "About what?" Inching closer, I admitted, "About us. I feel like you've stopped seeing me. You don't speak to me. You don't even touch me. Did I do something wrong?" For an agonizing while, she remained silent, her eyes fixed on the table, her fingers tracing its edge. I could see the tension in her shoulders, the tight clench of her jaw. Finally, she exhaled, meeting my gaze with a voice edged in bitterness. "I do everything by myself, Henry. I'm the one making decisions, caring for the kids. You're hardly even there. I feel abandoned." Her words struck me like a brutal blow. "You think I don't contribute?" I asked in disbelief. She offered a bitter laugh and replied, "It's not about contribution. I need a partner, someone who's present, and I feel utterly alone. Maybe you'd be better off without me." That admission pierced my soul. My stomach churned as I fought to remain calm. "Kelly, I don't want to be alone. I love you. I want us back," I pleaded, but she only turned away. I no longer feel it," she murmured. I swallowed hard, nodding as tears threatened to spill. I assured her I'd try harder, that I'd change if that's what she needed. Even as I spoke, a nagging thought gnawed at me. I work tirelessly, an 8 or 9-hour day at home, followed by every task imaginable once I clock out. I play with our boys, feed them, drive them to swimming lessons, tuck them in at night. Yes, I handle the routines, even the late-night wake-ups and sandwiches at midnight. Kelly might complain that I'm not as efficient when it comes to cleaning, but I do my share. I'm not one to continuously search for the next thing to do, unlike her ever-active father who never stops. Every evening, after the kids are asleep and my work is done, I simply unwind with a movie or some video games. A quiet escape from the relentless pressure. I had never dreamt of starting my own business. I valued stability, a steady job, a loving family, a good life. And for years, that was enough, or so I thought. We celebrated 4 years of marriage, and before that, 5 wonderful years together. Yet something began to shift. Our first deep conversation emerged one December evening, and I, against my nature, pushed myself to be proactive. Extra trips to the grocery store, unasked for fixes around the house, ensuring my evenings weren't wasted in idle silence. Kelly acknowledged my efforts, but nothing changed in her demeanor. The distance persisted, cold, detached, uninterested. It became unbearable, forcing me to confront the situation once more. Another night after the children were tucked in, I sat her down at the dining table, voice steady yet filled with urgency. "Kelly, do you want to save our marriage?" She hesitated, her eyes darting away. And when I proposed, "How about marriage counseling?" she just sighed, saying, "I don't know." My heart sank as I pressed. This isn't a time for uncertainty. Our children might soon only know separated parents. We need to decide, do we want to work through this? Silence reigned for a long moment before she finally agreed with a reluctant, "Okay." I took it upon myself to find a therapist, even though Kelly showed little enthusiasm. In our counseling sessions, painful truths emerged. "I married you to impress my parents and sisters," she confessed in a flat tone. "I never truly loved you. I was enchanted, not in love." Her words crashed over me like waves, reminding me that what I believed was a true, strong bond was nothing more than a facade maintained for appearances. During these sessions, I slowly learned that we communicated love in entirely different languages. I yearned for physical affection, a warm touch, a tender kiss, while Kelly craved acts of service, completed tasks, tangible efforts around the house. But even armed with this knowledge, our disconnect stubbornly persisted. After one session, I cautiously asked, "Did you feel any difference?" She simply shrugged, unwilling to allow herself to be vulnerable with a stranger. I knew then that unless she opened up, nothing could be salvaged. I had become the sole fighter in this crumbling marriage. One day during counseling, the therapist expressed shock upon learning we hadn't shared a bed in over 6 months. Kelly's flimsy excuse that she was sleeping with the kids did nothing to convince anyone. The therapist's suggestion was both comical and heartbreaking. If there's no room, just buy a single bed from IKEA and place it next to yours. So I did just that. I assembled a small bed and slept beside her every night. Still, as I lay there, I felt as isolated as ever. Kelly positioned herself on one side, the boys cozily in the center, and me left at the far edge of the bed, like a man unmoored from his family. As time wore on, Kelly's rationale shifted. She began insisting that the crushing loneliness of managing the household all day left her depressed. She claimed that her earlier harsh words had been driven by raw emotion, a sentiment I found impossible to accept because I recalled never having spoken so cruelly, even in my own moments of hurt. When she returned to work and we hired a nanny, the dynamic improved ever so slightly. We began talking again, yet the tender intimacy that defines a marriage was still absent. I wasn't merely asking for friendship. I was asking for the deep connection that binds husband and wife. I kept scheduling our counseling sessions, even as she dismissed them, claiming she was there only because I insisted. When during one rare encounter after a session I initiated intimacy, she simply lay there, unresponsive and withdrawn, her arms shielding her chest as if to protect herself from every touch. That moment drained any remaining desire I had, for intimacy had become mechanical, a duty rather than an act of love. Her detached, "If you don't like it, just leave me," reverberated in my ears long after she finished speaking, leaving me to wonder if she was provoking me to abandon the relationship or if she simply no longer cared. Then one fateful night, I discovered her making several late-night attempts to call her ex-boyfriend. 4 calls in rapid succession around 10 p.m., as recorded by an app on our phones. The revelation was as shocking as it was painful. Confronting her, I demanded, "Why were you calling your ex so many times at 10 p.m.? Her steady gaze betrayed nothing, and she quickly lied. I showed her the call log and pressed once more. With a sharper tone than I intended, I asked, "Did you text him after calling?" Before she could properly answer, I turned her laptop to reveal the incriminating message. "I'm going to keep calling until you answer and talk to me like a normal human being." The evidence was undeniable. The calls coincided exactly with the time our intimacy had vanished, and any contact with an ex is a red flag. In that instant, I could no longer ignore the whispers that had turned into a deafening alarm. At first, there were those who insisted I was overreacting, that rumors of her infidelity were mere gossip. But now the facts lay before me. I felt like a fool, a man caught off guard by a betrayal that had been brewing under the surface. I had contemplated a direct confrontation, perhaps even a call to her ex, but instead I chose to secure indisputable proof. I planted a simple voice-activated recorder in her car. Within 3 days, I captured her visiting work, then heading to the gym, and finally returning to call him. It wasn't clear who initiated the call, but the conversation echoed with the familiarity of our early days, filled with shared laughter, teasing, and that unmistakable spark. In that call, she unveiled plans for a vacation together, even speaking of a future arrangement where he would eventually move back to town. An hour-long recording chronicled my wife planning a life with another man, a life that was steadily replacing me. Now Kelly avoided spending any time with me in our rented apartment. As soon as the children were asleep, she claimed exhaustion or busyness with errands, anything to keep me at bay. Yet the recording confirmed everything. She openly proclaimed her love for him and revealed grand plans that left no room for me. She even mentioned that she'd soon leave me for him, abandoning not just me, but our boys. It was a devastating admission. I knew then that her silence with friends and family was a carefully constructed illusion, one meant to mask an affair growing in plain sight. Her lover was not a stranger. He was her first love, a relationship that spanned 7 years before she married me. Although he lived abroad and visited only sporadically, that long-ago passion had clearly never died. I refused to let myself be the pawn in her cruel game. I consulted my attorney, eager to learn my options. The legal advice was a bitter pill. I had undeniable proof that could ruin her reputation. Yet the attorney cautioned me, "Henry, think about your boys. Reckless revenge could destroy not just her, but them too." I clenched my jaw, knowing that while my heart yearned for retribution, hurting the children was the worst possible outcome. Her family, who I respected in many ways, might also be dragged into our conflict if I made the situation public. Custody battles are never fair, and my lawyer was stark. I wasn't likely to win full custody. The courts would favor her as the primary caregiver, leaving me with visitations and the looming burden of adjusting to life without the daily presence of my children. I learned that, despite all my contributions, I would only see them every other weekend, while our shared house, a testament to years of hard work, would likely be forced into a messy financial settlement. This reality was as painful as it was hypocritical. I had given everything to preserve our family, and now the system sided with a woman who had betrayed me. When the divorce papers were finally delivered right after Easter, I felt numb but determined. I remember sitting around the holiday table laughing with forced cheer as alcohol numbed my seething pain. On a Tuesday off, while taking care of my 1-year-old son, my brother arrived to help me pack up my belongings from our apartment, the one space that, as of that moment, still held echoes of happier times. Later that day, the postman delivered the official divorce papers, an invitation to mediation that painted the painful reason for the separation in cold legal terms: her relationship with another man. That evening, as Kelly returned home, I waited for her. My voice was steady as I told her, "I have undeniable proof. I'm deeply wounded, and you need to contact my lawyer immediately." Her face went pale with feigned confusion, answering, "What are you talking about?" I refused to give her any leeway. No more lies, no more excuses. I handed her the documents and walked away, the weight of every shattered promise pressing down on me. Before too long, I found myself at her parents' house. I needed to confront them, to ensure they heard the truth from me instead of Kelly's carefully spun narrative. Upon entering their living room, I sat them down and said, "I respect you too much not to tell you the truth. Your daughter has been unfaithful. I have recordings, undeniable evidence." Her mother gasped, covering her mouth, while her father's frown spoke volumes of the betrayal. "Are you absolutely certain, Henry?" her father asked with hesitation. I nodded firmly, recording the conversation as my lawyer had advised. Their words, affirming that I had always been a devoted husband and father, only deepened the sting. I left them with their silence as I drove back to the Capitol, burdened with the knowledge that Kelly's carefully maintained facade was crumbling. On the drive home, I phoned a friend and said, "Spread the news, let her friends know what she's done." 2 hours later, my phone rang. It was my brother-in-law. He revealed that she had admitted to being with him, though she continued to deny any physical consummation. "Henry," he said quietly, "everyone is on your side. She destroyed everything." His words were a small comfort amid the overwhelming betrayal. Yet then came another twist. Her sister tried to persuade me that perhaps our marriage could be salvaged, claiming that she had once forgiven her own infidelity. I nearly laughed at the absurdity. How could anyone believe that such deep betrayal could ever be mended? In my mind, I quietly formulated my own counterproposal, a radical idea that would allow me to remain with our children, yet free me from the shackles of our destroyed marriage. The thought of a partnership without the bond of marriage, separate finances, and stringent conditions haunted me. It even included a surreal clause: 7 months of me going on dates with random women, after which I would be allowed to cheat on her freely. I knew, however absurd this idea sounded, that it was just an expression of my inner turmoil. I didn't want to salvage the past with someone who had so callously tossed aside our shared dreams. As we navigated the divorce proceedings, Kelly's behavior grew increasingly erratic. While she sent occasional empty texts declaring love, her actions spoke volumes. She'd barely answered phone calls, shunned me during exchanges for the children, and everything pointed to her desire to keep an emotional distance. Meanwhile, her family rallied around her. Her father called. Her mother bombarded me with texts filled with links to messages about forgiveness and Christian love. And one of her sisters even said my wife had been possessed by an evil spirit. Yet one voice was more grounded, a sister who openly admitted that my wife had ruined our family and that there was no going back. I attended a communion where her sister had invited me, not out of hope for reconciliation, but so I could see my boys, even if briefly. As I sat at the table, the murmurs and side glances confirmed what I already knew. The finality in my heart was unyielding. When Kelly herself approached me, dripping with feigned remorse, "Is your decision truly final?" she asked timidly. I met her gaze and replied, "Yes, it's final. Nothing will change it." I was there solely for our children, yet her regrets rang hollow, amplifying the gulf between us. Her pleas became more desperate over time. She sent hours of messages pleading for another chance. "I'm sorry for everything. I can't live without you. Let's fix this for our kids." Yet every plea was met with silence or cold rebuttal. I vividly recall a moment after one counseling session when she lay beside me as I initiated intimacy. She simply lay there, her arms protecting her chest as if shielding herself from every genuine touch, leaving me to question whether she ever truly cared. Then came the night that irrevocably shattered any pretense of reconciliation. I discovered her calling her ex again and again. The incriminating call logs and messages left no doubt. In a fit of anger, I confronted her. Why the endless calls to him? I demanded answers as I showed her the proof, watching her eyes dart away in discomfort. In that charged moment, I realized the affair wasn't just a fleeting mistake. It was a plan for a future without me. Before long, amid legal meetings and soul-crushing arguments, my attorney advised me to consider the damage any public outburst might inflict on our children. As much as I wanted to retaliate, I knew that drastic measures would only hurt the kids. I was faced with a cruel choice: pursue revenge at the cost of my boys' well-being, or accept the painful, inevitable dissolution of our marriage. When the divorce papers came through and I handed them to Kelly that fateful day, I knew the battle had become irreparable. In a final twist, desperate for certainty, I arranged a DNA test with the boys, an act I never imagined I'd have to take. 3 agonizing weeks later, the results confirmed everything. 0% probability that they were mine. The shock, numbness, and crushing emptiness I felt were indescribable. I realized with a painful clarity that I had been deceived into raising another man's children. I immediately filed to have my name removed from any legal documentation of paternity, a move that sent shockwaves through their family and our mutual acquaintances. Following that revelation, her family bombarded me with calls, texts, and even unexpected visits. One day her parents came to my door, their faces etched with panic and disbelief. I invited them to sit, laid the DNA report on the table, and declared without softness, "I'm not their father." Her mother's reaction was immediate, a sharp intake of breath as she clutched her husband's arm. Her father, after scanning the document, tried to argue with me that a father is defined by love and presence, not blood. I could only laugh bitterly and reply, "Love isn't enough when you've been lied to and deceived." The confrontation left scars, yet it was necessary for me to lay bare the truth. The courtroom became the battleground for our shattered lives. The judge, his tired eyes reflecting decades of sorrow, pleaded with me to reconsider my stance for the sake of the children. "Mr. Carter, these kids see you as their father," he said. I felt my anger rising, and in a moment of seething frustration, I retorted, "They're caught in a lie. I did not choose this." The courtroom tension was palpable as both sides argued relentlessly. Eventually, the judge ordered additional DNA testing, results that confirmed what I already knew. I pushed for the sale of our once shared home, wanting to sever every tether binding me to a false life, despite protests that I was abandoning my kids. After months of intense legal wrangling, the divorce was finalized. I was left alone, no wife, no home, and the bitter reality of a man who had lost everything to betrayal. I moved into a small apartment in the capital, sleeping on my parents' couch and working from home, while spending every possible moment with my aging parents. Yet the one solace that still lit my dark days was the time I got to spend with my children on weekends. Those precious hours playing with them offered a brief respite from the pervasive sorrow. Financial disputes and custody battles complicated our separation even further. Kelly retained the house we built together, even though I insisted that the money I'd invested deserved fair compensation. Every discussion about child support and mortgage responsibilities turned into a bitter argument. One phone conversation remains seared in my memory. "Henry, you can't expect a fair deal when you're not even here full time," she argued, and I shot back, "I gave so much, yet I'm left with nothing but fragments of a stolen life." Such exchanges reiterated the irony of a system that forced me to be a weekend father, separated by an hour's distance from a home that once belonged to both of us. Then, as if fate were constantly toying with my fragile heart, Kelly began messaging again. Her texts were a jumble of apologies and desperate declarations. "I love you. I wish I could turn back time. I'm sorry for everything." Each message was met with my steely silence, or at times a venomous retort. "I hope you die so I can piss on your grave," I once texted in a haze of bitter anger, a message I later regretted, but which expressed the depths of my betrayal. Even as her family begged me to take her back for the children's sake, I maintained that our past was irreparable. At one point, her sister called me and accused me of being selfish for even considering a reconciliation for the sake of our kids. "This isn't about revenge on her," she said. "It's your children's future." I almost laughed at the absurdity. How could anyone convince me that staying in a shattered marriage was salvation when every day brought fresh reminders of deception? I knew deep down that the relationship, planted in lies and nurtured by infidelity, could never be rebuilt. The idea of ever having a true family again was as distant as a faded dream, one that I had to let go of, no matter how deeply I cared for my children. I'd even entertained the possibility of reuniting under the most unorthodox of conditions: a partnership without marriage, separate finances, and constant oversight. In a surreal twist, I even joked about being allowed to date others for a short period before returning to a co-parenting arrangement. But deep in my heart, I understood this was nothing more than an empty fantasy. The truth was, the wounds were too deep, and the deception too vast for forgiveness or reconciliation to ever take root. Time continued to pass, and after 9 grueling months of legal battles, emotional breakdowns, and countless sleepless nights, the divorce was finalized. I was legally free, but the cost had been more than I could have ever imagined. Every weekend, as the children visited and I drove them back at the end of the day, I felt the tug of a past I could neither reclaim nor completely erase. The memories, the lingering love, and the stark reality of betrayal coexisted in a painful, inescapable cocktail. In the aftermath, Kelly's family began to paint a narrative in which I was the selfish one, a man abandoning his children who claimed to love nothing more than his freedom. They insisted that by pursuing divorce, I was hurting our boys. Meanwhile, Kelly would call me, sobbing regrettably, saying things like, "I still love you. I'm sorry. Please, let's try again." Each message was met with my unwavering response: "Our marriage is over. I can't go back to a lie." I couldn't allow myself to be manipulated into a role that wasn't mine any longer. As I rebuilt my life, I turned to the gym, threw myself into each day with the determination to reclaim the man I once was, and focused on the precious weekends I had with my boys. Every drop of sweat, every moment of solitude in the capital city was a step toward healing from a betrayal that had destroyed not only our marriage, but also the core of our family. Today, as I share this story with you, I understand that there are no simple answers to the question, can love truly heal the deepest wounds? I sometimes wonder whether Kelly's remorse is as genuine as she claims, or if it's merely regret born of facing the consequences of her choices. Her attempts to reconcile, to stitch together a semblance of our once happy life, ring hollow against the backdrop of endless legal battles, shattered trust, and the brutal truth of the DNA test. This story isn't meant to glorify revenge or to cast blame solely on one person. It's a raw, unfiltered account of a man who dared to trust, a husband caught in the whirlwind of betrayal, and a father forced to choose between a lie and the painful pursuit of truth. In the end, I was left with just one truth. I did not raise my own children, and I could no longer sacrifice my own sanity and integrity for a family built on deception. Before we wrap up, we encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think is the price of betrayal? And if you find these stories as compelling as we do, please consider subscribing and liking this video for more in-depth accounts of real human drama. I remember the final confrontation all too vividly. One day, as Kelly's sister lambasted me, accusing me of being a selfish villain, I could only whisper, "You have no idea what you did." In that moment, she retorted with venom, "You treated me like garbage, and now you expect me to forgive?" I replied, my voice cold, "I was tricked into raising another man's children. I refused to live a lie any longer." The harsh words echoed as our son ran between us, the innocent interruption a stark reminder that our crumbling world was built on shattered trust and unbearable pain. In the courtroom, when the judge cautioned, "Think of the children, Mr. Carter," the weight of my decisions pressed in from all sides. I looked at the judge and, with a mixture of anger and resignation, said, "If you care as much about their future as you claim, then understand that I will not be dragged down by a constant betrayal." The ensuing months of deliberation, legal maneuvers, and emotional storms eventually culminated in a final decree. With the divorce finalized, I was left with a bitter reality, a broken home, a shredded heart, and the stark truth that sometimes the only way to free oneself from an endless cycle of lies is to let go completely, even if that means letting go of everything you ever loved. So here I stand today, a man marked by betrayal and loss, yet also one who strives to reclaim his identity one day at a time. My journey is far from over, and while I may never erase the pain, I'll continue to rebuild my life on the foundation of truth. I share this story in hopes that it sparks a conversation about forgiveness, the cost of deception, and the price we pay when love is replaced by lies. Thank you for listening to this deeply personal narrative. If you found this story moving or thought-provoking, please join our community by subscribing, liking, and commenting below. Your support means everything. Stay tuned, and until next time, take care of yourselves and of those you love.